guys, so today I wanted to make a video about how to stay happy during your 3rd and 4th year of medical school. These are usually your clinical years. Typically your first 2 years are didactic years, which is where you're sitting in a classroom, and then your last 2 years is when you're doing clinicals, you're in the hospital, and you're actually working with patients, and you're interacting with other healthcare professionals. So this is definitely a difficult part of medical school. I would say the most difficult part. You go from being in a classroom for like 20 plus years of your life to like real life situations, and you're interacting with people who sometimes aren't like the happiest or the friendliest. So it's definitely a really hard transition. And most people that I've known or spoken to have had a really difficult time transitioning between your didactic years and clinical years, just because it's such a shock, and I definitely experienced that as well. So I wanted to give you guys my tips about how I stayed happy and how to continue to stay happy throughout your 3rd and 4th year, and maybe also carry it on into residency. Obviously I'm not a resident yet, and I really just started my 3rd year. I've only been in it for 2 months, but I've actually rotated through a lot of different specialties just because of how my school has our clinical years set up. So I kind of got a gist of, you know, what I need to do to stay happy. When I first started, I started on surgery, which is a incredibly intense rotation. I think anywhere you are, any medical school you're at, surgery is definitely a difficult one. So I was really struggling during my first 2 weeks when I was in surgery, and it was honestly a time where I was like, is medical school right for me? Should I be doing this? And once I kind of developed my habits and the different things that I needed to do to maintain my sanity and stay happy, then, you know, I realized like, yes, I love medicine. It's just sometimes it gets a little bit more difficult, and we just have to make more of a conscious effort to make ourselves happy during this time. So the first tip I have is to have a support system who knows what you're going through. I think that is super important. You know, a lot of us have friends who aren't in medicine, or family members. They're not the ones there working for 12 hours straight. People are not being so kind to you because you're like the medical student, you're low on the totem pole, you know. I haven't been through that. So I think it's really important to talk to someone and have someone who does understand. Of course, it's really nice to talk to anyone about this, but especially somebody who's gone through it. That person for me was my sister. She's a 4th year medical student now, so she had already gone through this last year, and she also talked to me about it last year, but I could tell it wasn't as helpful for her because I hadn't gone through that. But now, as I'm going through that, when she's having difficult days, I understand better. Whether it's a classmate, somebody who's a year ahead of you, maybe it's somebody at a completely different school who you met while you were pre-med and you're still friends with. Just try to find somebody to talk to vent to. They'll also vent to you, you know, that's the good part. You'll have a mutual relationship where you can both like support each other, vent to each other, and I think that that's really important. And then number 2 is kind of silly because I know it's really difficult to do, but make sure that you're getting enough sleep. I know during certain rotations it's a lot more difficult, but sometimes I will even prioritize sleep over studying because I know that I am not gonna be a good medical student if I'm not getting my sleep that night. I'm just gonna be grumpy, I'm gonna hate life, I'm not gonna wanna learn. So sometimes it's better to just, you know, put the books down for the night if it's been a long day and just get some sleep. And it's okay to do that. You'll have days off where you can study, like 1 day off a week, or you can study. You have to remember, like, you're learning as you're going too during clinicals. It's not just like all the Anki that you're doing or all the online med ed you're watching. Like, you're actually learning when you're in clinicals too. And I often find myself actually remembering what I learned during like clinicals better than what I learned like clicking the Anki button, spacebar, or just watching like an online med ed video, because when it's actually your patient, you're learning a lot more. Obviously other people can function on different amounts of hours of sleep, which is great for them, but if you're a person who needs sleep, then definitely get your sleep, or else your mood's gonna be terrible, you're gonna feel really unhappy, and then you're not gonna learn as well, you're not gonna be as good of a medical student, you won't get as great of evaluations. So really, in the end, the sleep is gonna benefit you way more than the extra like hour of studying, I think. And then number 3 is to take one day at a time, and I know that's also kind of a silly one, but I honestly get most down when I think, oh my goodness, this is just clinicals. in med school. I still have residency to get through, I have intern year, but don't do that. Don't let yourself start thinking about everything that's gonna happen. You know, just take one day at a time. Especially in medical school, you get off at weird hours each day. It's not always consistent. Sometimes it's consistent, but sometimes the resident will let you off earlier or they'll let you off later. So it's really good to just think about that day and don't have any expectations for your whole entire rotations. I know it's really hard to do because we're really goal oriented and we obviously want to think about the future, about residency. We want to be prepared for all that, but sometimes that just can make you really unhappy, and so you have to consciously make an effort to be like, I'm going to be present today. And the fourth tip that I have for you guys is to try to do small amounts of studying every day. I know I also said try to get as much sleep as you can, which I would prioritize that definitely, but try to do maybe 10 UWorld questions a day, a couple Anki cards a day. Just try to do small amounts that are manageable. Don't come up with some crazy number, and it's totally fine. It's gonna add up by the time like your shelf exams come or by the time step 2 comes around. All those small amounts of questions are gonna add up. You know, I think it's always important to remember that it's not just about like the quantity, it's about like the quality of your studying. So if you're doing 100 questions versus like 10 questions and you only have 2 hours or an hour, those 100 questions, you're not going to spend as much time reading them, learning from them, as you would from the 10 questions that you're doing. So it might actually be more beneficial to you to do a smaller amount of questions and just focus more on those. And then that kind of ties in with my fifth tip, is to enjoy your days off. So if you do a small amount each day, then you can also do a small amount on your days off. You don't have to go crazy. And then by the time you have shelf exams or step 2, you'll have done a small amount and you don't have to start cramming the last week, do hundreds of questions, you know. So it's also kind of a good productive tip. Try not to get off of doing your questions or your Anki cards for too long. Obviously, if you had one night of the week where you got home really late and you were super exhausted, then you can just do a little bit more on your day off, but enjoy the rest of your day. Definitely take advantage of your days off. I'll do a little bit of studying, but I'll get to sleep in and I'll get to go do something fun. I always try to make plans on my days off, even though it's really hard to want to do something after you've been working for like 6 days straight. You kind of just want to take that day to sleep and you don't want to see anybody. But in the end, when you actually do something, you go do something fun, you feel like your day off was actually well spent, versus if you just like slept all day or mindlessly watched TV that you didn't even like, then you don't feel like your day off was actually worthwhile. Those are my 5 tips for you guys on how to stay happy during your 3rd and 4th year. Let me know what tips you guys have and what has made you stay sane during these really rough years of medical school. And honestly, just remember, it depends on each rotation that you're at. I know some rotations I am so excited to be there. I will stay hours upon hours in the hospital because I loved it. Just remember, you're on that rotation either for, you know, I'm on there for 2 weeks, which is nice, or you're on there for like 6 to 8 weeks. But the good thing about that is that you'll never see that rotation again. And if you don't like it, you don't have to see it again. And really just don't take anything personally. I know one of the toughest parts of 3rd year is that people are sometimes not the kindest to you as a medical student. Most of the time people are just having bad days. Someone else was rude to them, and so they're taking it out on you. So if somebody just wasn't as kind to you or said something mean to you, just try to think, you know, they're also having a bad day. It's not really something personal that you need to take to heart. Don't let that affect how you treat others. You know, be kind to everybody, be kind to all of the healthcare workers. You guys are all working for that patient. You want the best for that patient, so just remember that. And always just try to be kind to others, even if they're not the kindest to you. But a lot of times you'll have really amazing attendings and residents and nurses that really want to teach you and work with you, so it's great when you have that. So I hope those tips helped you guys. Like I said, let me know what tips you guys have, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.